Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us in our Webinar Wednesday series. This is Jennifer Schaus, and coming to you live from Washington, D.C. today. Our webinars are every Wednesday. They are complimentary and recorded. We usually post the recordings within 24 hours on our YouTube channel and also on our website. We have over 300 complimentary government contracting webinars that you can find both on our, again, YouTube channel and on our website. We don't take questions, just to keep the presentations short, simple, and to the point. So if you have questions for our speaker today, Susan Ebner, you can contact her directly, and her contact information will be on the last slide. A quick blurb about us. We provide services for federal contractors. We work with product, service, and software companies, helping them navigate the federal market through some of the services that are listed here: GSA schedules, pricing, business development, marketing, and more. You can find more about us on our website under the services section. We also want to thank our educational partner and sponsor, NVSBC, which is the National Veterans Small Business Coalition. They've been a gracious partner in this webinar series and also in our Get Far-Sighted webinar series that we host on Friday. So shout out to them for their participation. We've got an event coming up at the Kennedy Center. It's Monday, February 10th. It's 5:30 to 7:30. And currently we've got Department of State and NAVAIR who have committed to attend. So we hope that you'll join us. You can register for that by going to our website, navigate to the event section, scroll down to Monday, February 10th. Our newsletter reaches now almost 17,000 subscribers. If you want to advertise in that, and that newsletter goes out every Monday at 11 a.m. Just shoot us an email. We'll send over some pricing. Okay, so quick blurb about our speaker, Susan Warshaw Ebner. She's with Stinson, and the website is listed here on the screen. And I'm going to move on to our next slide, which is our topic for this entire month, which is cybersecurity and CMMC. So Susan, I'm going to stay on this page, let you jump in, and just let me know when you're ready for the next slide.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I really appreciate it, and thanks to everybody for joining in. We can go to the next slide. The purpose of this presentation is twofold. One, to talk a little bit about why do we have the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Program. I know a lot of you already know a lot about CMMC, in terms of the breakdown of what it, what the draft is. It's not final yet, but it's getting there. But my aim today is to kind of give you information on where are we going. So why are we here and where are we going? So the first one is the purpose. Next, please. So there have been, all you have to do is open up any kind of newspaper today or listen on the news and you hear all about cybersecurity issues. There's also the recognition that today, more than ever, the federal government is relying on external service providers to help carry out the government's business. And because of that, it's processing, storing, transmitting, generating sensitive federal information across their systems to support the government's business. So recognizing that more contractors are using information to perform services and do work for the federal government means these are additional points of contact that are at risk if somebody tries to access or do harm to them. So in the face of that, we see growing cybersecurity and supply chain issues and challenges. And the threats are everywhere from asymmetric threats that are economic, defense, nation states, terrorists and criminals, to just the insider threats as well. We also see threats in terms of the supply chain from ownership and bad actors. So CMMC, the whole point of CMMC is to go and address these kinds of threats. Just recently, if you've looked at the news, you've seen a number of things on ransomware attacks. The number and size of those attacks attacking federal and state agencies and entities has increased dramatically. So with that in mind, we look at the Cybersecurity Maturity Model, CMMC, as a potential way to address that. Next, please. Following the decision to address these information issues, we saw the FAR Council, that's the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Council, which issues the regulations that govern all executive branch agency procurement activities, implement FAR 52.204-21, which was a general safeguarding of information, federal contract information provision. And we also saw the Department of Defense implement the DFARS 252-204-7012, which you see on your screen, Safeguarding Covered Defense Information and Cyber Incident Reporting. That required, one, that contractors provide adequate security on all covered information systems, and two, it required implementation of security controls under the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, special publication 800-171, the version in effect at the time. That version has gone through several iterations, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but this provision basically said, particularly for defense contractors, you have to provide adequate security. That includes the NIST 800-171 standards, and it may include more, but at a minimum, you must provide that compliance. You also have to provide cyber incident reporting, ability to detect the malicious software if there is a cyber incident, to isolate it and preserve it so that if DoD seeks access to it for investigations, it has it. The problem arose because we had this provision which required you to be compliant when it first issued, that DoD was getting pushback, that a lot of contractors couldn't just say, I got it, I meet this requirement, but rather they needed to do work. I think a lot of us still need to do work. And so in 2018, DoD issued a memorandum saying, we're going to define compliance with these requirements as having a system security plan, an SSP, and a POAM, a program and milestones, that would establish where are you now and how will you get to full compliance. Seeing this kind of internal self-assessment and reporting was proceeding, DoD decided that it needed to do even more to address this issue. Next, please. The NIST 800-171 standard, which you'll see on this next slide, is the standard that applies to the DFAR clause. It contains currently 110 security controls. Those include the System Security Plan and the Program of Milestones, the POAM that we talked about. The FAR clause took 17 of those attributes, such as dual authentication and encryption, and it required those across the federal government. But layered on top of that are the DFAR clauses, which require compliance with all of the terms of the NIST 800-171. The NIST also issued SP 800-171A, which was an assessment tool for contractors to determine how they met these 800-171 requirements. In addition, it issued the 800-171B, which was for more enhanced security requirements for critical programs and high-value assets. However, next, please. However, while this was going on, MITRE was tasked with doing a report on addressing supply chain security issues, particularly the cyber issues. MITRE came out with a report in 2019, and that report very clearly determined that more action needed to be taken to avoid the situation and the risk that the government would be paying for the development or delivery of something that has already been compromised. So it called for, under the MITRE Delivered Uncompromised report, that there be a foundational risk-based analysis of what is needed to protect the information, which is controlled unclassified information, including covered technical information and controlled unclassified information that the government either provided or that a contractor might generate or use in the performance of the contract. It called for this assessment throughout the entire process of the procurement cycle, from initial development of requirements, design, manufacture, quality assurance, packaging, shipping, inspection, and then integration, as well as end of life. So because that report said we've got to do more, and you need to really be assessing cybersecurity as one of the pillars of procurement, the Department of Defense continued to look into what else it could do to increase this. Next, please. So looking for increased security, Not only was DoD concerned about it, but also the Congress has been concerned about it. And if you've been watching the National Defense Authorization and Appropriation Acts, you've been seeing that they're putting in more and more provisions that address cybersecurity in those appropriation funding statutes. The most recent NDAA that issued for 2020, preceding it, there was an executive summary in which the Senate actually took the position the world is more unstable and dangerous than it has been in recent memory, and we are at a pivotal moment. And so it was affirmatively asking for and seeking more to be done in the way of creating cybersecurity. The CMMC, in fact, provides that the risks to the defense industrial base not only impact the national economic security, but also our nation's security. And so more things have been implemented. Recently, an article reported that the NSA General Counsel, Glenn Gerstle, warned of future security threats, saying, "The first challenge is surely China and adversary and partner rolled into one. There isn't a better example of how technology knows no boundaries and how global technological development and trade produce complicated interdependencies." Next, please. So with all those things in the background, the Department of Defense decided we've got to do more, and moving away from that self-assessment, it's decided to proceed with CMMC, which is what we've got today. The CMMC currently is an effort that's intended to prevent the loss of controlled unclassified information, that's CUI or QE, sometimes people call it, in a cost-effective way in order for everybody to have necessary levels of cyber hygiene. That way, the government, through the CMMC process, will set certain levels. There are 5 levels that are anticipated. Level 1 is a foundational initial level. That currently, in the current draft, deals with the FAR-based rules and some more. Level 2 is sort of an intermediate level to get to level 3, which is the 800-171 at this point. And then levels 4 and 5 are for the higher asset, more critical program things. So the goal there is, by establishing these levels, for the government to set levels and then understand what it's got in terms of potential contractors and assess the risks to the program as part of its evaluation in the performance of contracts. Next, please. So not only will CMMC be used to assess the level of security, but it will also be used as part of an assessment when the government, after CMMC is implemented, will be including in things like requests for information, requests for proposal, and ultimately evaluation and award. Some of the key people that are involved in this from the DoD side include Ellen Lord. She's the DoD acquisition chief. She is the one who is pushing CMMC, along with Kevin Fahey and Katie Arrington. Katie Arrington has been appointed as the Department of Defense CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, and she has been going out and giving a lot of presentations recently to talk about CMMC and how it's going to roll out. Other entities that are also involved in this are DIB, the Defense Industrial Base Office at DoD, and the DPAP, the Defense Procurement Council. These people, particularly Kevin Fahey and Ellen Lord, have taken the position that cybersecurity and the CMMC authentication is going to become the foundation for government procurement. And that's a little bit different from thinking of it under the Delivered Uncompromised MITRE report, which said it should be a risk-based assessment. Here it's saying we want an external third-party certifier to come in and assess the level of cybersecurity compliance for contractors so that we can consider that in making awards and for performance. And it's going to become a go, no-go determining factor. So really it's going to become something that you almost would view as responsibility of the contractor. Do they have adequate cybersecurity, a foundational element? And they are intending that within the next 5 years that a contractor will need to be certified at the established level for a particular procurement in order to receive a contract. So that's why CMMC is just so important. Next, please. So the cybersecurity maturity model, I think we might have skipped a slide. Can you go back, please? There, perfect. Right, the cybersecurity maturity model includes a number of factors. As I said, the DoD has been issuing draft versions of it. The current draft version is 0.7. We've gone through commenting processes for versions 0.4 and 0.6. A number of those comments are very significant, very detailed. As of the last count, NDIA has submitted 2 sets of comments. If anybody's interested in learning more about that, let me know. We can talk about that. But what essentially is happening is the CMM certification is something to look at. What do you have now? What are your requirements now? And it establishes a series of these levels with processes that have to be addressed, as well as implementations and assessments. And so not to go into too much detail on it, but to talk more about what do we have moving forward, contractors need to be looking at how are they going to meet these various requirements. The CMMC is scheduled to be issued in final by the end of this month. That's because the Department of Defense is actually looking to the next step, which is to establish a governing body. So it's looking now to issue the CMMC within the next couple of weeks. So folks should be on the lookout for that. I don't anticipate that it's going to be a lot different than the current version 0.7, but what this really means is contractors need to be taking steps to be ready to be certified by the ultimate governing body that is established. This is like a key aspect of this because unless you have that certification level, once they start putting it into the RFPs, you won't be eligible to get an award. The current plan is that they will issue this draft CMMC in final by the end of January. They are starting on establishing the CMMC governing body, and starting in June, they will be issuing requests for information where they will be including information on the programs that will include, as an initial rollout, the CMMC cyber level requirements. And then starting in around September, they plan to be issuing requests for proposal, which actually will include those cybersecurity level requirements. And so proposals will have to address those. So contractors, in order to be ready to have a certification that's required by the time of award, it's going to take a while to get certified. There are a number of requirements that are out there, so they need to be thinking about starting now. There are some questions that remain on this draft. For example, the level 1 and 2 of the draft CMMC use terms that are found in the FAR-based version. They talk about federal contract information. Levels 3, 4, and 5 deal with QE, CUI. That's the 800-171. So some of those different terminologies need to address. They haven't established yet how these FAR and DFAR clauses are going to apply once CMMC is issued. And they haven't issued regulations yet on exactly what is CUI. That's a key thing for contractors to understand. Do they have CUI as part of the contract? And if so, what levels do they have to deal with? Other questions are if a contract, for example, has a specific level of security that's attached to it, would you be able to have subcontractors or suppliers that don't meet that level for the program? Can you take in a subcontractor or supplier that has a lower level of certification? Those are questions that need to be addressed. Currently, the FAQs are out under the DoD CMMC website. So you might want to take a look at those FAQs. There are a number of them. They are adding them on a periodic basis, even as we talk. So looking at that will give you some initial insights into exactly how CMMC is going to be handled. One of the things that we really are understanding is that they are not looking at having certification based on a program and milestones system security plan for how I'm going to be required to be compliant. Rather, they are looking at, are you compliant right now? what is your level of compliance. So it is a test, it is an assessment that's going to be for what is your status right now. So having a program and milestones, doing that walkthrough to see what do you have to do, what else needs to get done in order for you to start reaching these levels is going to be very important. And when the CMMC rolls out and they start identifying the programs and those security levels, contractors and subcontractors throughout the supply chain need to be thinking about whether they can meet those requirements. Next, please. Another thing about the CMMC program is that they are establishing a neutral third-party certifying body, basically an accreditation program, in order to establish that you meet this cybersecurity level that's mandated by the particular procurement. DoD's intent here is to develop standards and have contractors certified by a third-party neutral. That means somebody who is a certifier who is not in the position where they're affirmatively helping contractors get up to speed, rejigger their programs, install security requirements, but rather somebody who is just assessing them. So those entities or persons that are going to be assessors will have to be free from conflicts of interest in order to be assessors. So the CMMC body that is being established is going to be a not-for-profit. It's going to be incorporated, and once it's incorporated, the Department of Defense is going to enter into a memorandum of understanding with them to establish the terms of the accreditation program. As currently constituted, they expect that there's going to be 13 members in the governing party. They have also identified Ty Schreiber as the head of the governing body. He currently is the Senior Director for Executive Education at the University of Virginia Darden Foundation. Others that are expected to be named are supposed to be named by the end of January, and DoD has indicated they expect those people to come from academia, the defense industrial base, and also in cybersecurity. So they're looking for a group in the governing body that will be able to work with them on the standard setting and also on assuring that those third-party neutrals that go in to certify are actually going to be able to do the job. They will be conducting training of the certifiers, and that process is going to start once the full board, the accrediting body is in place, the MOU is in place. Between now and June, particularly, they indicate that they're expecting that training of certifiers is going to happen. There will be opportunities for folks to apply to be certifiers. I've heard of people already reaching out to try and find out about that. And then once the certifiers are in place, then they will start to roll out certification of contractors. This is going to be challenging. The number of certifiers has not been identified yet. Presumably, it's going to take time to get those entities certified. And in addition, once they become certified certifiers, it's going to take time to engage in the certification process. So there are going to be questions that are going to remain in terms of how are we going to get contractors who are going to be seeking to compete and get awarded under these CMMC level set procurements that are going to start in September. How are we going to get those established, and how are we going to address the certification of the supply chains of those that are ultimately selected? So those are some of the questions that are going to be outstanding. They are going to pose challenges. In addition, this accreditation group is supposedly developing tools for accreditation and for the collection of metrics on how contractors are doing. We may see some adjustment of the CMMC based on what they find, but at this point, they want it not to be a check-the-box exercise. They really want it to be something where they're really checking to see whether or not they meet the requirements that are laid out as security controls in the CMMC when it's finally issued. Other challenges are, of course, going to be small business and mid-sized businesses who are going to have timing and cost issues as well as putting in their system issues. DoD has said that they are hoping that professional service associations as well as prime contractors will help mentor, and perhaps there'll be some form of mentor-protege type of program coming down the pike. But there will be challenges in rolling out this certification program and answering some of the basic questions that are outstanding. Next, please. So in addition to once CMMC gets started, and in order to put clauses into contracts under the federal acquisition rules and under procurement standards, you can't just put in a clause as a one-off clause and use it for all your procurements. When you're going to be using a clause regularly, it has to go through, or it's supposed to go through, the rulemaking process. So there actually has been a DAR case that's been opened up by the Defense Acquisition Regulatory Council. That's case 2019-DO41, Strategic Assessment and Certification Cybersecurity. That open DAR case says that it is to implement a standard DoD-wide methodology for assessing contractor compliance with the NIST security requirements 800-171, protecting QE in non-federal information systems and organizations. So there's a little bit of a disconnect because that DAR case says that, yet when you look at the current draft CMMC that's out there, it's not limited to 800-171. It also includes other standards. It has some international standards. It has some draft standards. Comments have been made about that, indicating or at least questioning why those additional standards are in there. There have been changes to the draft CMMC as a result of a number of those comments, which is why the version 0.7 has a level 3 that really focuses on the 800-171 standards. But there will be challenges. On January 15th, the DAR Council did meet with DoD folks, and the DAR Council now has agreed to proceed to draft a rule, which is also going to include a provision to be included in procurements to address the CMMC implementation. So stay tuned on that. As I said, they have really got a desire to get these things through. They're interested in getting things finalized as quickly as possible. My best guess is that given the time frame that they have, which is quite short, that they're going to try and issue this rule in an interim fashion so that by the time the RFIs roll out, we'll have an interim rule out there. By the time the RFPs roll out, hopefully the rulemaking will be done, but if not, at least an interim rule will be likely to be in place so that they will include provisions in there. Next, please. So what's next? There's a lot going on, as we know. The key here is they're getting to the foundational CMMC certification. As I said before, it's not going to be self-certification anymore. You will need third-party certification. As to how contractors will get their systems in place and certified in time, that's going to be a challenge. Companies need to prepare for certification to address the limited number of certifiers, the things that have to be done to get started now. Some of the questions that we have are, will DoD provide for a temporary pass or grandfathering in of companies that have had some form of certification already in the cyber realm? Specifically, the Defense Contract Management Agency issued an amendment and a new Appendix 24 to the CPSR audit manual. That's part of the business systems audits that are conducted by contractors above a certain level. And those audits have provided now for a period of time already for cybersecurity audits of compliance under the 800-171 standards. So those companies that have already had those audits, that have been approved or passed those audits, the question is whether or not those might be something that would be grandfathered. We don't know the answer yet, but that is something that at least may be a possibility. Other things that might be possible are the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency conducts its own audit. So if you're a contractor that's been involved in one of those audits, it's possible that something like that or another form of certification might be something that they would look to. As I said before, the key is that they're not going to be just accepting a POAM for certification. They want to see real compliance and they want to see it validated by a third-party source. Other questions that are going to come up are going to address things like the need for consistency in the auditing. You're having a number of certifiers that are going to be going out there. They're going to be auditing people along the way who are prime contractors, who are subcontractors, who are small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses in a bunch of different areas, from aerospace and manufacturing to supplies and services. And is this going to be a problem in terms of assuring consistent assessment and level setting of the certifications? This is something to be seen. There will be, as contemplated now, there will be a vehicle to challenge CMMC certification results to establish whether or not they properly certified you. Currently, the way this is laid out, that kind of certification challenge would be to the governing body that's being set up. However, I think it's likely that there might be other protests or other vehicles to address CMMC certification matters. In addition, some of the questions will be, what do we do if we have a change to our organization? Is that going to impact CMMC certification? We know now under the business systems rule that every time that you change your system, you have to get it re-audited and reassessed. Is that kind of re-audit and assessment vehicle in the business systems rule going to be applied here to CMMC? This is a question we don't know the answer to. The other question is, once you get certified, how long will your certification last? Even if you don't make a change, the whole essence of the NIST 800-171 standards that are going to be included in here provides at least that in order for you to have a system that really provides cybersecurity, you have to be doing ongoing scans and surveys and updating of your system. How is that going to jive with the certification? Is there going to be a level set of I've been certified at this level and that's going to last for a certain period of time? Or as things evolve, if you do make changes, are you going to have to go and get recertifications? So those are some of the issues that are out there. Other points are requests for equitable adjustment. I raise that because let's say you have a contract, you get into a contract, it's just supposed to be a level 3, and you have a cyber incident and the government tells you you need to do more in order to counter this threat. So is that going to be something that's going to be a change in your contract? You're being required to do something that increases the scope of what you do, may impact your schedule, the way you perform, may impact your timing and cost. And so those are traditionally things that we think about when we think about requests for equitable adjustment or contract changes that may be compensable. So when you think about cybersecurity and the CMMC rollout, also be thinking about what happens once you get into a contract. How are you going to address those costs? There have been questions about how to deal with the costs of cybersecurity implementation for CMMC. The DoD has said these costs will be allowable. However, there are a lot of questions about how allowable those costs really are. One of the concerns is if contractors previously have certified that they're compliant with 800-171, there's going to be a real concern about moving forward. CMMC comes in, you get certified, and lo and behold, they say you don't meet the requirements, you don't meet that level, you aren't fully compliant with 800-171. Is this going to open up a situation where the government may say your prior certifications were not accurate? Could it expose you to the risk of false claims? So I think contractors really need to be getting ready now, making sure that they are addressing their requirements and really taking care in their SSPs and POAMs that they have now to make sure they're accurate so that as things move on, when they do get certified, they do meet the requirements that they're aiming for. I think that's all there is for now. Stay tuned. There will be many more things happening in the future, but the next step is let's watch out for the final version 1.0 of CMMC, which should be happening by the end of this month, and then look forward to certifications and what levels are going to be provided for the rollout of the different programs that are going to be impacted initially in CMMC. Thank you.
Susan, great information. Obviously, a lot of questions that are still unanswered, and many things for contractors and the government to think about. So thanks for sharing your insight and knowledge on the topic. Obviously, you know a lot about this, and if anybody has questions about cybersecurity, CMMC, now or even after the rollout, please contact Susan directly. Her contact information is here on the screen. It's susan.ebner, E-B-N-E-R, at Stinson, STINSON.com. And her phone number is 202-572-9927. Again, thanks so much, Susan. This was a great presentation. I learned a lot. And thanks to all the attendees for joining us. We hope to have the recording up on our website and also posted onto LinkedIn later this afternoon or at least by tomorrow. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And we've got one more Wednesday in January where we will be continuing to cover this topic. Next month, we get into OTAs, other transaction authorities, and then March, we cover bid protests. The full schedule is on our website under the webinar section. Thanks again for joining us.